Hello there, welcome back to the channel and another Versus episode. And to clarify, as my disclaimer with all these, we have to equalize these two factions to make sure we can believably believe they can actually harm one another. In other words, the weapons of one universe have to be able to affect the ships and people from the other, at least on some level, to equalize it. Their other technologies remain the same. So with that little disclaimer out of the way, let's get started on this matchup, which is between the Felis Sapiens and the Tangata Manu, otherwise known as the Cats, and the Hawkmen. Who's going to win in this dust-up? Let's find out. So a little bit of backstory on these two factions. We'll start with the Felis Sapiens, the Cats for short, because I don't want to keep saying Felis Sapiens. They are a humanoid bipedal species that evolved from a domesticated cat from Earth. And there's some inbreeding conversation to be had here, which resulted in, I think, some insanity amongst the species, but I suppose given enough time, enough genetic diversity took place that they became separate again, not just all brothers and sisters. Let's forget that little detail. Who were they? Their entire civilization actually evolved on a massive spaceship called the Red Dwarf. Red Dwarf was a human-built spaceship which was a mining vessel out in deep space. Now, the cat that was pregnant aboard the ship that gave birth literally to this civilization was a forbidden animal. It was a contaminant aboard the ship. But because the crew were all killed, the cat, protected, evolved in the hold. Now, thanks to some ambient radiation over about 3 million years, and I'm assuming some other generous factors going on here, their species evolved to be very human-like, even adopting our language that they learned from reading crisp packets and other things that they found aboard the ship, as well as our sense of style, dress, and even some pop culture references. Their civilization became basically humanoid, but retained a lot of cat-like features, including sharpened canines, and they tended to groom themselves. They would lick their clothing clean, for example. Eccentricities of their technological evolution, considering they were aboard a spaceship, meant that they didn't need to quickly evolve things like the wheel, but they did evolve the trouser press as a technological evolution, which they considered necessary for their culture far earlier. Their civilization was quite religious. They built a religion around the concept of cloister, who was basically their progenitor, their god, and their Eden, their heaven, which was their destined place where they were all going to go, and it was going to be perfect, which was actually based on Fiji. Their entire map to Fiji and their destination, the way they got there, was actually based on a laundry list that was left behind by Lister, which was the actual human being who was the cat's owner, who was the progenitor of their entire species, who somehow remembered his name and was able to pass it on to his kittens. Somehow. Eventually, their civilization decided to leave Red Dwarf, leaving behind the insane, the sick, the elderly, and those that they considered undesirables to their society. After having a minor civil war over what colour the hats were going to be when the people went to live in Fiji, they decided that they'd all go off on two ships and find this place. One of these two ships instantly smashed into an asteroid, and the other one actually went to an unknown destination and got lost. Maybe. It's out there somewhere, perhaps. Stragglers of this civilization, feral cats, would later be encountered, and they actually had ships that were built out of recycled components and technology from other Earth vessels that they had scavenged along the way. And they'd actually become, I'm going to call them more like pirates, but let's generously call them organized. These feral cats had, their ships were armed, they were actually relatively powerful, and they'd managed to build a few of them. After all, this civilization's entire culture evolved aboard a massive spaceship with all of its technology for them to study. So not only did they have accelerated evolution over just 3 million years, going from a cat to basically human-like, but also they had a technological revolution with access to all the technology which allowed them to learn language, learn reading and writing, all these things that are pre-done for them all around them. It actually artificially accelerated their cultural evolution, and seemingly they were a very intelligent and highly adaptable race that were big on survival. Although they didn't seem to domestically produce very many weapons, they did adapt and reuse and copy weapons built by humans. They would take something they would find aboard the Red Dwarf or other ship that they would encounter, and they would replicate it. They'd learn to adapt it and mold it to their own needs, indicating their civilization was actually highly intelligent and adaptable. Although it was often seen when an individual cat encountered a threat, it would try to make itself look bigger by raising its arms in the air and showing off its fangs. They were a carnivorous species, but they were capable of eating other things. They preferred fish and bird as two of their main staples of food that they would get from the ship's dispensers, or they would go out and try and hunt. They are a relatively endangered species, with, at the height of their civilization now, there are relatively few of them left, and what there are seem to be scattered all over the galaxy looking for their promised land. But they are still around and they're survivors. The other combatant here are the Hawkmen, which is what we're going to call them for simplicity. This is another species that evolved on Earth from birds. At one point in their history, they were actually able to fly. They all seem to have lived on what is now known as Easter Island on Earth, but they must have lived elsewhere on the planet as well. As the human race evolved, their civilization began to be wiped out, either apparently through human aggression, but it seems to be probably a combination of things that their descendants have disregarded and simply lumped together as, oh, humans drove us from Earth. But when you really think about it, their civilization, unless they were aided by an alien, couldn't leave Earth unless they were already a technologically advanced race. And that's like saying that our civilization is going to have to go live on Mars because octopuses are a little bit smarter than we think they are. And it seems more likely environmental as well as possibly social and economic pressures within their own society forced them to leave Earth, as perhaps Earth was becoming a place that they could no longer live. They eventually went to live on a new planet. Humans continued to evolve on Earth, and they lost the ability to fly as it became a less useful thing, but they retained a lot of the instincts. They didn't have hair, they had feathers, and a hawk-like appearance in their facial structure and heads, although they basically were human in appearance, just with feathers and hair, but the coloration made them kind of resemble an eagle or a hawk. Their ships were also very bird-like in appearance, not unlike the cat peoples, who some of their early ships were also very cat-like in appearance, which, is just interesting. Again, that puts us in the Spaceballs universe, where we were building ships that would look like us. But anyway, I digress. The Hawkmen were a proud warrior people in many ways, but they were also a very highly enlightened and intelligent civilization that was very old, far older than humans. But when humans ventured out into deep space and found them, their civilization was vulnerable to humans because, although they had a proud history and they were very old, they were no match for the much more aggressive humans and were ultimately wiped out, with only a few survivors. And it's those survivors that unfortunately we're going to have to look at, because we don't know much about the greater military of their people and their technology. Both of these civilizations, I should point out, I've left this out in technology, they have maybe some kind of FTL capabilities, but let's just say they've got FTL. They can travel faster than light, and that's the beginning and end of it, shall we? There has to be a lot of suspension of disbelief with some of these factions' technology, as we can generously say it's science on another level we don't comprehend, that their ships are capable of FTL travel, but it's so far over our primitive 21st century minds that we can't fully understand it. Maybe they travel through wormholes, maybe they've just got some advanced warping technology, maybe they use some kind of advanced displacement drive or so, who knows? They can do it because they're super advanced, both the cats and the Hawkmen. So, what happens if these two civilizations, both on the endangered species list, come head to head? So, what happens in this theoretical combat? The feral cats and other cats, they come looking for Earth. They're looking for their promised land, not necessarily Earth, say, but they're looking for this perfect world. And perhaps they think it's the Hawkman's world, or a planet he's protecting. He wanders in, they come flying into his territory, and he's like, no, you guys can bugger off. This is my planet. He's already kind of he doesn't like humans, and the cats, they're a little too much like humans. Yeah, they're a bit more independent and they don't need no human, but the cats are just a little too close to human for his comfort. They, like him and humans, evolved from a creature descended from something that lived on Earth. The cats are instantly rather aggressive towards Hawkman, who also equally responds with aggression. Now, the cat vessels, although armed, are not well armed. They're not dedicated warships. Their vessels are a little ramshackle. Hawkman is an experienced combat veteran, and the few others of his kind that are in the area that we're going to have to again generously assume that they've now formed a colony and they're trying to defend it from the cats trying to think it's their promised land and live there. The battle will be short. The cats will attempt to invade and land, thinking that they can, just eat these stupid birds or something, because they're cats and these are birds, and we know how that dynamic normally goes. You introduce a cat into a new ecosystem with just birds, and the cat's it's an environmental disaster. The birds are gone. So that's what the cats think's going to happen. They think it's going to be a walk in the park. They're going to invade this little world and they're going to knock these stupid bird people aside. But the bird people, no, the Hawkmen, they're a lot stronger than that. They're tougher. They're vicious. They're fighters. Their talons are sharp and their beaks are non-existent, but they will fight. And they fight hard. See, they're fighting for their survival. The cats, they're just fighting because they think it's religious dogma that they should live on this world, that this is their promised land. But it makes them fanatical. And although the two sides, the cats seem to have every advantage, there's more of them. They've got several ships, they're big, they're quite well armed, but the Hawkmen, they can run rings around them. They're seasoned professional fighters. They're used to taking on the much bigger, more powerful humans that they fought before, and as well as other races, and it's just not as easy a fight as the cat think it's going to be. Very early on, Hawkman's able to take out two of their vessels easily. One of the cat ships slams itself into a moon because they don't know how to pilot these ships because they're bloody idiots. And that's where the map told them to go. So automatically, we've lost 3 cat ships already. Now we're down to 2 cat vessels and 1 Hawkman ship, with the other fighters coming in to assist. The cats realize that their backs up against the wall. They turn their ships on their sides to make themselves look bigger, but they just expose their bellies to Hawkman's attack. 1 more cat ship is destroyed. The remaining one, it gets the hell out of there because a cat knows when it's being defeated. And, they're almost out of their 9 lives. So they retreat. They do try and come back when they regroup, and there's a little bit more success this time. See, the other feral cats, they're still out there, but they haven't got the numbers really. They still arrogantly proclaim that they're going to come in and they're going to win. They engage the Hawkmen again. This time the Hawkmen take a few more casualties because the cats, they've learned their lesson a little bit. They combine their weapons into a single ship and try to make one vessel that's a little bit stronger, but it's all for nothing. The Hawkmen are simply too seasoned, too advanced, and they're too used to war, whereas the cats, they're not a warlike people, and cats, they're not always known for cooperating with one another. They don't coordinate very well, and they're a bit too individualistic, and their baser instincts cause them to try to fight and scrap, but when that doesn't work, retreat. Eventually the Hawkmen come out victorious, and the cats have to retreat and go looking for their promised land somewhere else. But let me know in the comment section below who you would think would come out on top in this particular matchup. And like, share and subscribe. Thank you for watching if you made it over to this video. Bye bye.